Hello, my name is Melanie McComb. I'm a genealogist with American Ancestors and the New England Historic Genealogical Society. This class is discussing muster rolls and related proof of service during the Revolutionary War. During this class, we're going to be discussing published records of Revolutionary War service, muster rolls, what are they, what information can you find from them, as well as how you can access these on both the sites Fold3 and Family Search. We're also going to be looking at service records for not only men, and also find out how you can find out records for women's service in battle. Starting with published records of Revolutionary War service. One of the key resources we like to look at for documenting a possible patriot is Virgil White's Index to Revolutionary War Service Records. This 4-volume set can help you identify if you have someone that served during the war, even if they didn't have a pension, but they have a service record attached to them. From this excerpt, which we can see this volume set is arranged alphabetically by surname and then by first name, we see an entry for Ichabod Butler. He served as a private in the 2nd Massachusetts Regiment. We're going to be looking more about him in this class. Knowing the state and what regiment he served with is going to be very key to finding out more about his service. Knowing that he had served with the Massachusetts Regiment, we can turn to other published records, which include Massachusetts Soldiers and Sailors of the Revolutionary War, which document and include sketches on individual soldiers that had served for Massachusetts. This collection can be accessed in several libraries as well as online on Family Search, which you can see has been digitized into multi-volumes. So once we go into the correct volume that has the entry, we go into volume, in this case, we're looking at volume 2, which has the entry for Butler. That would be there through BES or BYX. So once we can go in, we can go ahead and click those pages to open up the digitized book. And here we see the entry for Ichabod Butler that we had saw earlier with a little bit more information. Ichabod Butler of Berwick, list of men mustered in York County by Joseph Bragdon Jr., muster master, dated March 17, 1777. Captain Samuel Derby's company, Colonel John Bailey's regiment, enlistment 3 years. Also, private, 2nd company, John Bailey's regiment, Continental Army pay accounts for service from February 1st, 1777 to December 31st, 1779. Also, Captain Samuel Derby's 2nd Company, Colonel's Company, Colonel Bailey's regiment. Continental Army pay accounts for service from January 1st, 1780 to February 1st, 1780. So a lot of good information that we're seeing here, and we see that there is some information about maybe where he might have come from, since he was mustered in York County. That gives us an idea that he was in what is now Maine, but was part of Massachusetts at that time, and is possibly from the town of Berwick. Now, there are other state published records that you can seek out. This is just a small amount of the books that we have in our particular library of many different resources where you can look up different soldiers or mariners that had served during the Revolutionary War by state. So as you can see, we have books by North Carolina, Rhode Island, Vermont, etc. So I'll have more of these listed in your handout that you can find out more about what books are available. So when we want to figure out about more about their service, we turn to a key resource called a muster roll. Now, what's a muster roll? A muster roll is really just a list or a return of all the troops, including any officers and enlisted men that were present or accounted for on muster day. So what would happen is that the soldiers would be summoned to respond at roll call when their names are read out loud. So in this case, someone would probably read out like Ichabod Butler, present, something like that, and you would be accounted for as part of a muster day. So these can be very valuable because if someone is not there on muster day and they've not been accounted for by their commanding officer or someone else that would know about their whereabouts, well, they might think that a soldier might have deserted the unit, and then they would go looking for them. So, or there might be a case of where they find that maybe someone was lost during any battle and they weren't accounted for, and they might try to at least go find out what happened to that particular unit. These muster rolls also contain when a soldier had actually joined a unit as well, or was formally discharged. This is an example from our special collections at NEHGS, which is a muster roll of Captain Thomas Cartwright's company here. And we can see that it's arranged by rank. So here we have the sergeants on top, and then here are the privates. And they list out when they were appointed or enlisted, so we have the actual date. And sometimes we even have remarks here that can be helpful to find out more about them. In this case, we have an entry for a Rich Martin, who's noted as remarks as sick in hospital. So that tells us that maybe he was shot at or something else happened that would account for why he was in the hospital at that time. So how do we find these muster rolls? Well, one place we like to search is on the site FOL3, which is very much focused on military records and other resources, and it has a high amount of material related to early wars such as the Revolutionary War in America. On FOL3, they have a section for the Revolutionary War rolls. So these are going to be the muster rolls that were originally on microfilm, over 138 rolls, and have now been fully digitized online. As you can see, it is at 100% on here. So you can actually go ahead and click Browse to find a particular unit's muster rolls. In this case here, we're going to look more for Ichabod's unit. So we're going to go into Massachusetts, which we're going to select under state. On the next prompt, you'll see that it's saying to select publication. In this case, we're going to search on the organization. We know that he was part of the 2nd Regiment as one of the units besides the Continental Army. So we're going to search on 2nd Regiment. And then there's going to be a list of folders. In this case, there's only one folder, but sometimes there can be multiple. So we're going to click on the 3. And that's going to then access the images. So in this case, there are 260 images for the 2nd Regiment between this time period. Now, you could actually do a search on a particular name within a particular file. And in this case, I actually searched on within it to find Ichabod Butler. And here he was listed. And it noted that he had his 3-year term. And it noted that he was discharged on February 1st, 1780. Now, what I find really interesting at this time is paying attention to who else is in the unit. There's also a William Butler. So I would think that the next step would be, especially if you were trying to find out more about him, is, well, could William be a butler or a father or some other relative to him? I would look to see if there was an entry for him in Soldiers and Sailors that may help identify if he's also coming from Berwick as well, or another surrounding town, since that could be another possibility. A lot of times you'll find that family members would serve together. You can also access muster rolls on Family Search. On Family Search, there's a collection for the Revolutionary War rolls, 1775 to 1783. And these not only include muster rolls, but also payrolls, if there was any supply records of things that were being supplied to the American Army during the war. And this collection is arranged a couple different ways, where you can do a search from this screen and put in a first and last name, or you could actually browse the collection if you wanted to drill into the regiment, just like we did on FOL3. So in this case, I had actually searched on a Thomas Walker, and here I see that he had some military service in 1779 and places noted as Delaware, and he was a rank of private. We're going to then click on the image to see a little bit more information about it. So here we see Thomas Walker is on the list of a payroll of Captain John Patton's Company of Light Infantry of the Delaware Regiment, commanded by Colonel David Hall, for the month of February 1779, and it noted how much pay he was being actually paid out for serving. Now, a lot of these different muster rolls, as I mentioned, have been on microfilm, And in many states, we find that there are index cards. So, for example, Massachusetts has these index file cards of the Revolutionary War. There's 259 microfilms, and we can access these on Family Search by going to the respective database. So in this case, here's Massachusetts Revolutionary War and the index cards. And you can do a name search here by putting the first and last name, or you could go into the individual unit by browsing. So when we get into and want to take a look, if we want to browse the entries, we can actually go into the collection here, and it describes the 259 microfilms that are on file. The repository where they originally are held is at the Massachusetts State Archives, knowing that a lot of state archives are going to be holding records, especially if you're looking at any kind of militia units. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can actually see how it's arranged. It's actually arranged alphabetically. So even if you don't come up with a search, you may want to browse it manually in case there's another variant you haven't come across, or you want to just see how many come across for that name if you identify a possible relative. So in this case here, I'm actually going to search within Baldwin James and Banks Jeremiah for a particular record. And then knowing that I can click on the camera icon on the right to actually browse that particular collection. So here I have a Lexington alarm roll for a Benjamin Bailey in 1775. And it noted that he had responded to the alarm on Lexington, and that he was actually from the town of Mansfield. And then noted when he had marched, going into the unit, and it looks like he was a part of the 7th Company, West Company Militia in Mansfield. And he was part of a company that was allowed 58 miles travel from home and return travel allowed. So a lot of times you may even find that there's not a lot of battle service, but maybe someone was, answering the alarm, went out, and then came back, which could still qualify them for patriotic service. Now, if we want to learn a little bit more about some of these Patriot soldiers, now that we've identified some of the muster rolls, we turn to the service records. So what's in the service record? We get their name, we get their unit, which includes down to their regiment, their commanding officers, what period of service they were serving for. Sometimes we even find the muster rolls that they're attached to. Those pages are actually part of the file, or they're the index card version of it that tell you where they were mustered from, as well as also payrolls. So if we were looking for service records, one place we can turn to on Family Search is this index that was provided courtesy of Fold 3, which does have the compiled service records from 1775 to 1783. And these are then arranged under either the Continental Troops or by the state, then the organization, and alphabetically by surname. So in some cases, it may be easier just to do a search on a particular name to find it. Otherwise, you have to drill into a few layers to get to where you want to go. You can also just go straight to Fold 3 and actually go to the Revolutionary War service records. So here we can go ahead and do a search up here at the top by the person's name, or you can go to browse the records. I had actually done a search for Ichabod Butler, and in this case there was only 2 entries, one in New Hampshire and one in Massachusetts. Well, we knew our served with Massachusetts 2nd Regiment, so that one was pretty easy to determine. We then went ahead and clicked on the entry to pull up his file. And his file was only a few pages long, but it did give us some information. So here we have his name, noted that he was served with the 2nd Massachusetts Regiment as a private. We have these different card numbers, which reference internal index numbers for records that the Mass State Archives has. So in a lot of cases, you'll find that when there's different documents that are added, they are numbered. We can then get into the actual index muster rolls. So while this is not the muster roll we saw earlier that was handwritten, this is actually a card that was compiled with some of the key information. So here it lets us know the dates that they had served. He was mustered at West Point. At this time, he was serving 3 years, and even noted his discharge date here at the bottom. Now, we also want to talk about how you can document women's service in battle. While it was not very common, there were some notable examples of women that did serve in battle. One of them we always like to think of is Deborah Sampson, but there were others that actually had served. One of the big stories we heard about, probably in grade school growing up, was the story of Molly Pitcher. This was a story of a woman that was carrying water to the troops at the Battle of Monmouth, and the story goes is that that a man was down, and possibly it was probably her husband he was no longer able to take over the artillery, and that she then jumped in and helped out during this war with no training in hand. Well, there's a little bit of a story about who she was. There's two possibilities. One they think is that it's Mary Ludwig Hayes, and there actually was an account that was written at that battle that noted that there was a woman who was very much working with her husband in the artillery, not standing by just serving water, and actively took over when her husband was injured and not able to take to run the cannon. And because of her service, they believe that it was Mary Hayes. She had actually petitioned the Pennsylvania legislature after the death of her husband that she wanted a widow pension for her husband serving. But she was also recognized for her own service during the war. And it was noted that she was directed to be paid $40 and then an annuity of $40 to commence starting in January 1st, 1822, payable half yearly during her life. So a lot of cases we find that with women, not everybody was like Deborah Sampson, where there was an actual pension awarded to her. There was actually other ways that women were recognized, and that was through annuities. And these annuities were noted in government records, minute books. So in the executive minutes of Governor Joseph Heister in 1822, which is also on Fold 3 in their Pennsylvania archives, there was formally an act for the relief of Molly McCauley, so pretty close on her name, for her services during the Revolutionary War. So this was a way how you kind of see a little glimpse of here was Molly being recognized for her patriotism during this time. So in review, we've shown how muster rolls can be used to document the activities of a soldier, so accounting for them on muster day, as well as where they are in battle if they are out on duty. The compiled service records give you even more details because they can give you a change in rank, if they've been imprisoned as a prisoner of war, and even documenting when they were formally discharged or their death as well. So it's important that we look at all of these original documents to tell more about your patriot story. And I hope this inspires you to learn more if you have any patriots in your family tree. Thank you.